I never imagined that our son's graduation could turn into both a nightmare and a moment that would change everything. I had always dreamed of that day, him graduating, my husband and I celebrating together, smiling with pride, but reality was completely different. What happened during that ceremony no one could have predicted. And me, I discovered strengths I didn't even know I had, precisely when I thought everything was lost. The day began with that typical graduation excitement. Our son looked radiant in his suit, beaming with pride, and I felt like an emotional mother, ready to capture every moment. But something felt off. My husband seemed distant, distracted, almost indifferent. I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe it was just nerves or accumulated work stress. Arriving at the auditorium, I realized he wasn't by my side. I searched for him in every corridor, between every row of chairs, but nothing. My heart began to tighten. The photos, the smiles, the music playing, everything felt unreal without him there. I could feel our son's gaze, confused, yet trying to maintain the composure of a grown-up. Then, while all the parents were greeting each other and taking pictures, I heard a murmur behind me. I turned, and he appeared, but not in the way I expected. What he did next changed the entire atmosphere of the ceremony and left everyone around us speechless. I froze for a moment, unable to comprehend what I was seeing. My husband walked down the aisle, but instead of taking his seat beside me, he stopped in the middle of the auditorium. Everyone's attention shifted toward him. Whispers spread like wildfire, people craning their necks, wondering what was going on. My son looked at me with wide eyes, a mixture of confusion and worry, and I felt my chest tighten even more. Then, in a move that no one expected, he pulled out his phone and held it up, speaking into the microphone that had been left unattended by the ceremony organizers. "Everyone, I have something to say," he began, his voice trembling slightly, but carrying across the room. I couldn't believe it. My heart pounded, my hands shook. What was he doing? Was he apologizing? Announcing something? My mind raced. I want to acknowledge something important, he continued. "I know I haven't been the husband or father I should have been lately," gasps rippled through the crowd. I could feel eyes burning into him, into me, into our son. He paused, swallowed, and then said words that no one could have predicted, "And I want to publicly apologize to my wife for leaving her alone today. She has been the real hero, the one who raised our son, supported him, and ensured this day happened beautifully, even without my support." A hush fell over the auditorium. Parents exchanged shocked glances. Teachers stopped mid-step, and our son, initially tense, broke into a smile, his pride shining brighter than ever. Then something even more unexpected happened. My husband stepped aside, gesturing toward me. "This day isn't just about him graduating," he said, his voice now steady. "It's about recognizing the people who make this possible, and she deserves more recognition than anyone here today." Tears blurred my vision. The entire room turned to look at me. I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions: shock, disbelief, embarrassment, and finally, gratitude. My son clutched my hand, whispering, "Mom, you're amazing." It was in that moment I realized something profound. Even though he had abandoned me at first, the unexpected act that followed transformed the day entirely. People who had only seen the surface of our family witnessed the truth. Strength, sacrifice, and love don't always follow the script we expect. And just when I thought the moment had ended, my husband did something that left everyone, including me, completely stunned. He knelt down before our son, in front of everyone, and handed him a small, folded note. "Open this when you're ready," he said softly. Our son unfolded it carefully, curiosity mixing with anticipation. The words on that note, simple yet powerful, revealed something none of us had imagined, something that changed the meaning of the entire ceremony forever. The auditorium fell silent again, the tension so thick it was almost palpable. Every eye in the room was on our family, and I realized then, this day, which had started with abandonment and uncertainty, was about to become unforgettable, not for what was expected, but for what actually happened next. Our son's hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the note, his eyes scanning each line. My heart raced. I could feel every heartbeat echoing in my chest, and the auditorium seemed to hold its collective breath. Everyone was watching: parents, teachers, classmates, and yet, in that moment, it felt as if the world had shrunk to just the three of us. The note was simple, handwritten, but its words were profound. "Son, I may not have always been the father you deserved, but I promise from this day forward to be better. I see your mother's strength, your love, and her sacrifices. Honor them, learn from them, and carry that with you always." Our son looked up from the paper, his eyes glistening with emotion. He turned to me and whispered, "Mom, he's really saying it this time. He really means it." Tears filled my eyes. I had spent years feeling unseen, unappreciated, and sometimes abandoned, yet in this moment, everything shifted. My husband, the man who had left me standing alone just minutes before, had found a way to acknowledge not only his failures but also my unwavering dedication. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't ideal, but it was honest, and honesty, after years of tension, was more powerful than I could have imagined. Then, the unthinkable happened. Our son stood on his chair, holding the note high, and addressed the audience. "Everyone, this isn't just about me graduating," he said, his voice strong despite the quiver of emotion. "It's about my mom, who made all of this possible. She never gave up on me, even when things were hard. And my dad, he finally understands her worth." Applause erupted instantly. The room filled with clapping, cheering, and even tears. Teachers and parents alike were moved by the authenticity of the moment. I felt my son squeeze my hand tightly, and for the first time that day, I allowed myself to fully breathe, fully feel. But the surprises didn't end there. My husband stepped forward again, this time taking the microphone for the second time. He cleared his throat, and with a voice that carried sincerity and remorse, he said, "I failed you both. I failed to be there when it mattered most. But today, I want to make a promise: I will never let her do this alone again. We will face life together, from triumphs to challenges, from graduations to everyday moments, and I hope our son learns not just from my mistakes, but from the power of acknowledging them and choosing to do better." The auditorium was completely silent, except for our son's quiet sobs and the soft sniffles from parents nearby. The combination of vulnerability, apology, and recognition created an almost tangible shift in the room. I looked at my husband, feeling a swirl of emotions: anger, relief, disbelief, hope, and realized that sometimes, the most impactful moments come from the unexpected, the imperfect, and the deeply human. As the ceremony continued, our family walked together to the stage. I held my son's hand tightly, and my husband beside me no longer felt like the absent figure from earlier, but like someone who had finally shown his willingness to grow, to learn, and to value what had always been right in front of him. That day, the graduation wasn't just a milestone for our son, it became a milestone for our family. It was a reminder that love, accountability, and courage can transform even the most painful moments into something unforgettable. And while nothing erased the past, what mattered most was how we chose to face it, and how, in the end, we discovered that even in moments of abandonment, redemption and unity could emerge in the most surprising ways. After the ceremony, as the crowd began to disperse, I felt a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and a strange exhilaration. What had started as a day of fear, tension, and disappointment had transformed into a moment none of us would ever forget. Our son, radiant with pride and emotion, clung to my hand as we walked through the hallways. I could feel every gaze on us, not in judgment, but in quiet admiration. People had witnessed something real, something raw, a family facing flaws, acknowledging mistakes, and finding strength in honesty and love. The drive home was silent at first. My husband seemed reflective, perhaps even humbled by the experience. I stole a glance at him, unsure if I was ready to forgive fully, but knowing that the events of the day had changed something irreversibly. I don't know what else to say," he murmured finally, breaking the silence. "I didn't handle today well, but seeing you there, holding everything together, I get it now. I really do." I looked at him, my emotions a tangled mix of anger, relief, and hope. For years, I had carried the weight of responsibilities, sacrifices, and disappointments almost entirely on my own. That day, however, reminded me that people are capable of change, even the ones we least expect it from. Our son, sensing the tension and emotion between us, smiled softly. "Mom, Dad, today was amazing," he said. "I've never felt prouder of you both." His words, innocent yet profound, cut through the lingering frustration. I realized that the ceremony wasn't just about graduation, it was about growth, accountability, and the opportunity to rebuild bonds that had long been strained. In the weeks that followed, the impact of that day became evident. My husband made genuine efforts to be present, at school events, at home, and in the everyday moments I had carried alone for so long. It wasn't perfect, old habits lingered, and there were moments of tension and doubt. But the gesture at the graduation ceremony had set a precedent. Honesty, recognition, and accountability could mend bridges that seemed broken beyond repair. Our son, observing these changes, began to understand the complexities of human relationships, the flaws, the apologies, and the courage it takes to admit mistakes and do better. He matured in ways I hadn't anticipated, learning resilience, empathy, and the importance of facing uncomfortable truths with honesty and courage. I, too, discovered something within myself. That day had tested my patience, endurance, and emotional strength. It revealed depths I hadn't known existed, the ability to forgive, to guide, and to embrace vulnerability without fear. I realized that strength isn't always about holding everything together silently, it's about expressing emotion, setting boundaries, and allowing those around you to rise to the occasion when given the chance. Months later, when reflecting on that day, I understood that the graduation ceremony had been a turning point, not just for our son, but for our entire family. It had taught us that even when someone abandons their role, even when disappointment feels unbearable, moments of unexpected honesty and vulnerability can create profound transformation. And the most important lesson of all, life will never be perfect. People will fail us, circumstances will challenge us, and expectations will be shattered. But what defines us is how we respond, whether we let anger and resentment fester, or whether we embrace growth, courage, and the chance to rebuild connections stronger than before. That day at the graduation, which had started with isolation and abandonment, ended with clarity, gratitude, and hope. It was a reminder that even the smallest gestures, acts of honesty, or moments of vulnerability can ripple outward, changing lives, healing hearts, and transforming families in ways we never imagined. The weeks after the graduation ceremony passed in a blur of new realizations and subtle transformations. What had started as a single moment of tension, the fear, the abandonment, the uncertainty, had expanded into lessons that reached far beyond that day. Our family dynamic had shifted in ways I never anticipated. My husband, once distant and distracted, began to show a sincerity and presence I had longed for but almost gave up hoping for. It wasn't instantaneous. Some days, the old habits crept back, lateness, distraction, moments of self-absorption. But whenever I felt that frustration rising, I remembered the courage he had shown during the ceremony. The act of stepping forward, acknowledging his mistakes, and publicly recognizing my efforts had planted a seed, a reminder that people are capable of change when given the chance. Our son noticed too. He began observing our interactions with a newfound awareness. The small acts of accountability, the gestures of support, and the genuine presence from both of us became lessons in empathy, respect, and responsibility. He started expressing his thoughts more openly, sharing his dreams, his worries, and even his frustrations. Watching him grow in emotional intelligence made me realize that the ripples of a single moment can extend far beyond what we imagine. One evening, a few weeks later, we sat together as a family in our living room. My husband, unusually reflective, spoke softly. "I know I can't change the past, and I know I've hurt both of you in ways I can't undo. But I want to do better. I want to be someone you can rely on, someone who notices, who participates, who appreciates." I felt tears welling up. His words weren't just empty promises, they carried sincerity, the kind that can only come from witnessing the consequences of one's actions and feeling genuine remorse. "You've already done so much," I replied, squeezing his hand. "But actions speak louder than words. Show us that you're here, not just today, but every day." From that moment on, subtle changes became consistent patterns. He attended school events, helped with homework, engaged in conversations about feelings and plans for the future. We laughed more, argued less, and began to rebuild trust brick by brick. Our son thrived in this new environment, knowing that both of us were present, both committed, both learning how to navigate life together. The impact of that day extended beyond our household. Friends, relatives, and even some teachers remarked on the visible change. People began to approach me, sharing their own experiences of abandonment, forgiveness, and reconciliation. I realized that our story had become a quiet example, that even flawed individuals could transform, that families could heal, and that courage sometimes means creating space for growth, not punishment. Months later, during another milestone, our son's first big academic competition, I noticed something remarkable. He faced the challenge with confidence, resilience, and a level of emotional maturity that seemed beyond his years. When he stood on the stage, delivering his presentation flawlessly, I saw reflected in his eyes the lessons of that graduation day, the strength of his mother, the accountability of his father, and the transformative power of honesty and vulnerability. Looking back, I understood that life is not about avoiding mistakes or failures. It is about navigating them, learning from them, and creating opportunities for growth. The moment my husband abandoned me at the graduation was painful, unforgettable, and formative. But what followed, the unexpected acknowledgement, the gestures of apology, and the gradual rebuilding of trust, taught me that even the darkest moments can become catalysts for profound change. By the end of that year, our family had transformed. Our bond was stronger, deeper, and more resilient than ever. I had learned to embrace vulnerability without fear, to set boundaries while offering forgiveness, and to recognize that growth often comes from the most unexpected circumstances. My husband had learned to show presence, sincerity, and accountability, and our son, who had once looked to us for guidance, now carried within him the lessons of resilience, empathy, and the power of redemption. That graduation, which began with abandonment and uncertainty, became the foundation of a new chapter. It reminded me that life will always challenge us, sometimes in ways we never anticipate. But it also reminded me that courage, honesty, and the willingness to embrace imperfection can turn even the most painful experiences into moments of lasting transformation. Time passed, but the memory of that graduation day remained etched in my mind, like a permanent mark of transformation. It wasn't just the ceremony itself, the abandoned seat, the hushed whispers, the note, or even my husband's public acknowledgement. It was the ripple effect that followed. That single day became the fulcrum on which the future of our family pivoted. In the months that followed, I watched our son grow in ways that surprised me. He had always been bright, but now he carried with him a deeper understanding of life, resilience, and human imperfection. He learned that people make mistakes, sometimes hurtfully, but they are capable of redemption. He observed how his father could finally step into his responsibilities, showing accountability, presence, and love in ways that had seemed unimaginable just weeks before. My husband continued to show growth. He wasn't perfect, old habits still lingered, but the contrast between what he had been and what he was becoming was striking. I realized that transformation isn't about erasing the past, it's about taking responsibility for it, learning from it, and consistently making better choices moving forward. He began to take initiative, not just in big gestures, but in everyday life, helping with homework, planning family activities, attending school meetings, and actively participating in conversations that mattered. I, too, continued to grow. That day had tested my patience, resilience, and ability to forgive. I learned that strength is not just about enduring hardship silently, it's about recognizing the humanity in others, setting boundaries, demanding respect, and allowing space for mistakes and growth. I discovered that true courage is measured in repeated acts of patience, empathy, and deliberate choice, not in singular heroic moments. The impact of that day extended beyond our home. Friends, colleagues, and even acquaintances began to notice a change in our family dynamic. The visible shift inspired conversations about accountability, respect, and the power of acknowledgement. People started sharing their own stories of reconciliation, forgiveness, and growth, and I realized that our experience was more than personal, it had become quietly transformative for others as well. One particularly memorable evening, we hosted a small gathering for our son's friends and their parents. During the event, several parents came up to me, expressing gratitude for showing how families could navigate mistakes, misunderstandings, and absence without falling apart. They said that witnessing our journey gave them hope and the courage to address challenges in their own homes. It struck me profoundly, the impact of one courageous act, my husband's public acknowledgement, had multiplied far beyond the ceremony itself. By the time our son entered the next stage of his life, high school, then early college, I noticed a profound shift in all of us. He carried confidence, empathy, and a sense of accountability that was deeply rooted. My husband had become a partner I could rely on, not just physically present, but emotionally invested. And I had become a mother and wife who understood the true meaning of patience, courage, and resilience, not the superficial kind, but the kind forged in fire and strengthened over time. The lessons of that day extended into our daily lives. Arguments were now opportunities for dialogue rather than conflict. Disappointments became lessons rather than sources of resentment, and moments of frustration transformed into opportunities to model empathy, responsibility, and understanding. I realized that life is never perfect. Challenges will always arise, people will fail us, and circumstances will test the limits of our patience and courage. But the story of our son's graduation taught me that even the most unexpected acts, apologies, acknowledgement, and honesty can spark transformation. It taught me that growth, resilience, and forgiveness are choices we make repeatedly, every day, in ordinary moments as well as extraordinary ones. Looking back, I understood that graduation day wasn't simply a milestone for our son, it was a turning point for all of us. It was proof that even when life abandons you temporarily, unexpected courage and accountability can create ripples that last a lifetime. And in that realization, I found a profound sense of peace. No matter what the future holds, we had learned to face it together, with honesty, empathy, and the unwavering strength of a family that had endured, transformed, and thrived. Years passed, but the lessons of that graduation day remained embedded in our lives, like an invisible thread connecting every choice, every interaction, and every milestone we experienced as a family. The moment my husband left me alone, the note, the public acknowledgement, those events became more than memories. They became the foundation upon which our family rebuilt itself, stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than ever before. Our son grew into a young man of remarkable resilience and character. Watching him navigate life with confidence, empathy, and integrity was a constant reminder of how transformative even a single day of honesty and accountability can be. He often reflected on that graduation, speaking with pride about how he witnessed both failure and redemption, and how those lessons shaped his understanding of what it means to be responsible, courageous, and compassionate. My husband, too, continued his journey of transformation. What had started as a moment of public acknowledgement became a lifelong commitment to presence, responsibility, and emotional engagement. He learned that being a father and partner is not about grand gestures alone, but about consistent attention, honesty, and the willingness to adapt and grow. We argued less, listened more, and shared responsibilities with an understanding forged through shared experience and vulnerability. I discovered my own capacity for patience, forgiveness, and emotional depth. I learned that strength is not simply enduring hardship, it is choosing empathy in the face of anger, understanding in the face of frustration, and hope in the face of despair. I realized that courage is cultivated over years through repeated decisions to face challenges rather than avoid them, to embrace vulnerability rather than hide from it. The effects of that graduation day extended beyond our immediate family. Friends, relatives, and even strangers would occasionally recount moments where our story had inspired them to act with accountability, to apologize when necessary, and to prioritize honesty over pride. It was remarkable to see how a single event, sparked by a moment of confrontation and reconciliation, could ripple outward, influencing lives we would never personally meet. As the years unfolded, our family faced new challenges: college applications, first jobs, moments of personal failure, and societal pressures that tested our values and resilience. Yet the lessons we had learned from that day about honesty, courage, empathy, and redemption remained our compass. Even when mistakes were made, even when tensions arose, we had a framework for navigating life together, and it transformed each challenge into an opportunity for growth. One evening, years after that unforgettable graduation, we gathered as a family to celebrate another milestone, our son's first major career achievement. He looked at us with gratitude and pride, and I saw in his eyes the reflection of the courage, resilience, and love that had been nurtured through years of both struggle and triumph. My husband reached for my hand, a silent acknowledgement of how far we had come, of the countless lessons we had learned, and of the unwavering bond that had grown stronger because of the hardships we endured together. It struck me then that life is a series of interconnected moments, each building upon the other. A single moment of abandonment, followed by accountability and honesty, could redefine a family, shape a child, and transform the lives of everyone willing to learn and grow from it. I realized that we are all flawed, that mistakes are inevitable, and that true strength lies not in perfection, but in the willingness to face those imperfect irons, embrace accountability, and act with courage and empathy. By the time I looked at my family that night, I understood that our story had come full circle. The girl who had once felt abandoned, the husband who had once been absent, and the son who had once stood confused and vulnerable, each of us had transformed. We had learned that love is more than words, that courage is more than action, and that family is not defined by absence or failure, but by the willingness to grow, forgive, and support each other through every challenge life presents. And in that moment, I felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude. Life would continue to test us, shadows would appear again, and mistakes would be made. But we had discovered the secret of enduring strength, honesty, empathy, accountability, and the courage to embrace every moment, no matter how unexpected, as an opportunity to transform, heal, and grow. The years continued to pass, each one carrying new challenges, victories, and lessons. But the memory of that graduation day, the fear, the abandonment, the note, and my husband's unexpected acknowledgement, remained the cornerstone of our family's growth. That single moment had transformed the way we related to each other, the way we faced adversity, and the way we defined love and responsibility. Our son had grown into a remarkable young man, shaped not only by his own ambitions but by the lessons he absorbed from observing us. He carried resilience, empathy, and a quiet confidence that came from understanding human imperfection and the power of redemption. I watched him navigate life's obstacles with courage, always remembering that the foundation of strength comes not just from personal achievements, but from witnessing integrity, accountability, and love in action. My husband, once distant and distracted, had become a partner I could rely on completely. Not perfect, certainly, but consistently present, emotionally engaged, and willing to acknowledge his mistakes. The man who had left me alone in the auditorium had become the man who built trust brick by brick, day by day, proving that even the most flawed individuals are capable of profound change. I had changed too. I had learned that strength isn't silent endurance, it is courage in the face of vulnerability, patience in the face of frustration, and empathy in the face of hurt. I had discovered that forgiveness is not weakness, but an act of power and wisdom, and I had realized that a family is defined not by perfection, but by resilience, growth, and the willingness to face life together. The lessons from that day continued to ripple outward. Friends, relatives, and even strangers would recount how our story inspired them to act with accountability, communicate openly, and embrace growth rather than resentment. It was humbling to see how a single event, a moment of honesty, courage, and acknowledgement, could ripple far beyond the walls of a single auditorium, shaping lives in ways I could never have imagined. And then came a quiet evening years later, when I found myself alone with my husband and our son, reflecting on all that had happened. My husband reached for my hand, his eyes soft with emotion. "I know I can never undo the past," he said, "but I hope I've shown you that I can learn, grow, and be here with you, today, tomorrow, always." Our son smiled, holding both of our hands. "Mom, Dad, I know that, and I know that I've learned what it means to forgive, to grow, and to value the people who truly matter." It struck me then, life would continue to challenge us. Shadows would always appear. Mistakes would happen. But the courage, empathy, and honesty we had cultivated over years meant that we could face anything together. That graduation day had been a turning point, but it had also been a seed of love, accountability, and resilience that had grown into something far greater than I could have imagined. I realized that the most profound moments in life are often born from hardship and imperfection. A day that began with abandonment and fear had ended in transformation, hope, and connection. And in that truth, I found peace, gratitude, and a deep understanding of what it truly means to be a family. As I watched my husband and son, I finally understood, life is never about avoiding pain or disappointment. It is about embracing the challenges, learning from mistakes, and choosing love, courage, and honesty again and again. And when we do, even the most unexpected moments can become the foundation for a lifetime of growth, unity, and enduring strength. That day, that note, that unexpected acknowledgement, they had changed everything. And in the quiet of that evening, I smiled, knowing that our family had not only survived the storm, but had emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever before. Life was still unpredictable, shadows would still appear, and mistakes would still happen, but we were ready, together, and that, I realized, was everything. Time had a way of smoothing some scars, yet the memory of that graduation day remained vivid, etched in my mind, my heart, and even in the subtle rhythms of our family life. What had begun as abandonment, fear, and frustration had blossomed into something I could never have anticipated: transformation, understanding, and a profound sense of unity. That single day had become a cornerstone upon which we rebuilt not only our family relationships, but our perception of what love, accountability, and courage truly meant. Years passed, and our son grew into a young man whose character reflected the lessons of that pivotal day. He was ambitious, yes, but more than that, he was resilient, empathetic, and grounded. I watched him face challenges with a confidence that didn't rely on perfection but on understanding imperfection. He carried with him the awareness that mistakes are inevitable, that people sometimes fail, and that forgiveness and accountability are the keys to lasting relationships. My husband, once distant and distracted, had transformed in ways I could never have predicted. He wasn't flawless, but his consistency, presence, and emotional engagement became a steady force in our lives. The man who had once abandoned me in the auditorium had learned to take responsibility, to actively participate in our lives, and to value the contributions and sacrifices of both our son and me. Every small gesture, whether helping with homework, attending parent-teacher conferences, or quietly listening during long conversations, was proof that change, though gradual, could be monumental. I, too, had grown. That day had tested my patience, resilience, and ability to forgive. I had discovered that true strength isn't silent endurance, it is courage in vulnerability, grace in adversity, and empathy when confrontation arises. I learned to embrace imperfection, both in others and in myself, while maintaining boundaries and demanding respect. I understood that life's greatest lessons often come not in triumph, but in navigating mistakes and growing from them. The ripple effects extended far beyond our home. Friends, relatives, and even strangers who knew our story began to reflect on their own lives, inspired by the courage, honesty, and vulnerability that had unfolded before them. I received messages from parents who had learned to apologize, from couples who had discovered the importance of acknowledgement, and from children who had found examples of resilience and accountability in our story. What had begun as a private struggle had, quietly, transformed lives around us. Over time, as our son achieved milestones, graduating high school with honors, entering college, embarking on his first career opportunities, we celebrated not only his accomplishments, but the profound growth of our family unit. He carried the lessons of that day with him, the importance of forgiveness, the courage to acknowledge mistakes, and the value of consistent love and accountability. My husband had become not only a partner I could rely on, but a man whose integrity and empathy inspired everyone around him. Then came a quiet evening, years later, when the three of us sat together reflecting on all that had transpired. My husband took my hand, his eyes soft with emotion. "I know I can't undo the past," he said. "But I hope I've shown you that I've learned, that I can grow, and that I will be here for you, always." Our son, holding both our hands, added softly, "Mom, Dad, I've learned so much from you both. From the mistakes, from the growth, from the courage to do better. I know the importance of family, honesty, and forgiveness now." In that moment, I realized that life would continue to test us. Shadows would appear, mistakes would happen, challenges would arise that we couldn't predict. But we had discovered the most profound truth of all: the strength of a family isn't measured by the absence of failure, but by the willingness to face it together, with courage, accountability, and love. Looking back on that unforgettable day, I understood that the seemingly small and painful moments, the abandonment, the whispers, the note, were seeds of transformation. They had grown into a lifetime of connection, resilience, and profound understanding. The girl who had once stood alone at a graduation, the husband who had once been absent, and the son who had once been confused and uncertain, all of us had been transformed. We had discovered that life's challenges are opportunities in disguise, that love requires accountability, that forgiveness is an act of strength, not weakness, that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it, and most importantly, that family is not defined by perfection, but by the strength to face imperfection together and grow from it. As I watched my husband and son that evening, a profound peace washed over me. Life was still unpredictable, shadows would still appear, and mistakes would still happen, but we were ready, together, stronger than ever. And I knew, without a doubt, that the courage, empathy, and love we had cultivated over the years would carry us through every challenge life could possibly bring. That graduation day had started with abandonment. It ended with transformation. And in its wake, it left a legacy far greater than any ceremony, any speech, or any accomplishment. It left a family united, resilient, and capable of facing the future with unwavering strength, honesty, and love. Time passed, yet that graduation day never truly left my memory. It had been a day of fear, disappointment, and abandonment, but also of revelation, courage, and transformation. Every moment of that ceremony, the empty seat beside me, the note my husband handed our son, his unexpected acknowledgement, and the reaction of our son, had left an indelible mark on our family. What had seemed like a painful setback became the catalyst for our growth, shaping the lives of all three of us in ways that stretched far beyond the walls of the auditorium. Our son had grown into a young man whose strength was rooted not only in achievement but in empathy, resilience, and moral awareness. He faced challenges with courage, understanding that mistakes were part of life, that failures could teach lessons, and that forgiveness and accountability were far more powerful than resentment. Every decision he made reflected the lessons he had witnessed: that courage is sometimes quiet, that honesty can heal wounds, and that love is as much about accountability as it is about affection. My husband, once distant and inattentive, had transformed profoundly. He was not perfect, but he had become a man of presence, reliability, and emotional intelligence. He learned to step in without being prompted, to listen without judgment, and to acknowledge the contributions and sacrifices of both our son and me. He became a model of growth, someone who proved that it is never too late to change, to learn, and to make amends. I, too, had evolved. I had discovered that true strength is not merely endurance, it is courage, patience, empathy, and the willingness to embrace imperfection in others while maintaining your own boundaries. I realized that love is an active choice, not a passive feeling, and that growth often comes from embracing discomfort, facing fears, and transforming challenges into opportunities for unity and understanding. The ripple effects of that day extended beyond our family. Friends, colleagues, and even strangers were inspired by our story. I received messages from parents learning to apologize, from couples learning to communicate honestly, and from children discovering the importance of observing accountability and courage firsthand. That one day, initially marked by abandonment, had sparked a chain reaction of growth and awareness that none of us could have predicted. Over the years, we celebrated countless milestones: our son's achievements in academics and early career, my husband's steady presence in all aspects of family life, and our shared moments of joy, reflection, and triumph. Yet each milestone was underscored by the memory of that graduation day, a reminder that life's greatest lessons are often born from the most unexpected, painful, and transformative experiences. One evening, as we sat together reflecting on our journey, my husband spoke with quiet sincerity. "I know I cannot undo the past," he said, "but I hope I have shown that I can learn, grow, and be here fully with honesty, presence, and love." Our son, holding both our hands, added, "Mom, Dad, I've learned from everything we've been through, from the mistakes, from the courage, from the forgiveness. I know now what it means to value family, to take responsibility, and to act with integrity." It struck me then that life would continue to test us. Shadows would appear, mistakes would happen, and challenges would arise that we could not anticipate. But we had discovered something eternal: the power of accountability, the courage to admit errors, and the strength to face life together. That graduation, which began with abandonment, had transformed into a lifetime of lessons about love, growth, and resilience. Years later, I looked at my family, the son I had raised with love and guidance, the husband who had learned accountability, and myself, tempered by experience and strengthened by forgiveness. I understood that the most profound moments in life often emerge from pain, imperfection, and challenge. That day had shown us that love is tested through adversity, courage is forged through vulnerability, and a family's strength is measured not by perfection, but by the willingness to endure, forgive, and grow together. And in that moment, I felt an overwhelming peace, gratitude, and certainty. Life would continue to be unpredictable. Challenges would come, shadows would reappear, mistakes would be made, but we were ready, together, stronger than ever. And the legacy of that day, the courage, honesty, and love we cultivated, would ripple outward, shaping not only our family, but everyone whose lives we touched, now and for generations to come. That graduation, once a moment of abandonment, had become the defining moment of our lives. It was proof that even the deepest pain, the most unexpected challenges, and the most imperfect actions could give birth to growth, unity, and enduring strength. And in that truth, I found the ultimate meaning of family, resilience, and love.